boy, you want to talk about exciting, and why I'm getting younger each day is because I'm able to bring those light bulbs in my own mind as I'm bringing it in theirs.
2025. What is in store for the legal industry? We are here with Dave talking about his incredible journey, being an innovator, really his entire career in the law business, and being back into his practice reinvigorated by both the youth and the ideas of people, extrapolating and pulling those golden nuggets out of their brains. I'm excited to hear a little bit about Eterna and how that's helping people and the genesis of that idea. But I'm also really curious to explore what you see happening as we go forward into a brighter future around the legal industry specifically.
When I met Guy Riemann, my partner in Eterna, here was a guy who his whole entrepreneurial experience, I think you did a show with him recently as well, has been in the technology industry, right? And so he ultimately sold his company to Disney, which ultimately became Disney Plus. His technology team built what we now know as Disney Plus. So here's a guy who was innovative with technology as I was with law. But I got to be honest with you, I'm pretty incompetent when it comes to technology. And I say that admittedly, right? But I'm not incompetent to how it works. Right? I'm incompetent how to use it sometimes, but I'm not incompetent of how to identify its impact. So that's really what we created Eterna, right? So when I was looking at my law practice, I realized all these people were going to LegalZoom and all this stuff. Remember, I'm not just a lawyer. I don't do litigation. I do estate planning, asset protection, and long-term care planning. How to keep people in their home as they age, right? How to avoid nursing home. How to make sure the government doesn't, you don't lose all your money in the nursing home. How to make sure that you get the best care you want. How to make sure you get to stay home. Wills, healthcare practice, power of attorneys, trust, revocable trust, irrevocable trust. This is the world I live in. And so when I looked at this, I'm like, well, wait a minute. There's all this craziness where the law practice can't be owned by a non-lawyer. Now, just for the first time 3 years ago in Arizona, they said for the first time ever, a law firm could be owned by a non-lawyer. Now, that opens the gates. That's the tipping point. It just hit 3-4 years later. We still don't have movement on that. Maybe one other state has, and 5 other states have it in, they've been talking about it. But once that hits, game over. The practice is gone, right? What we know about the practice of the law will be gone. Not bad, okay? This is not a shoot across the bow to go, whimper and whine. This is a shot across the bow to engage and prepare. And that's really where Eterna came from. Because what I said was, people are getting smarter. They're getting more technologically advanced. How do I know this? Because the guy who was using Zoom, who couldn't get his clients to use it, soon grandma, age 86, is talking to grandkids over Zoom. So now everybody's getting a little more accustomed to this technology and what it does. So I said, well, the way we interact with our clients has to change. So I'm not going to promote Eterna here, but what it is, why it's different than the LegalZooms of the world and the willandtrust.coms of the world is those are things all about the document, okay? But those are all a computer programs somewhere else. And oh, by the way, if you want an attorney, we'll connect you with one. Eterna was based the exact opposite. It's saying, listen, there are people right in our local communities that come to our law firm or don't come to our law firm because they're intimidated by lawyers or they want something simple. How do we engage them in that mechanism? So really what the Eterna platform did is it took law practices. We don't market to the clients. We market to the law firms and say, wouldn't you like a technology that when you interact with consumers to hire you, they can hire you one of 3 ways. They can do the traditional where they come in, knock on your door, sit at your desk and hire you, come into their next meeting, hire you, print the paper out. That's your traditional way. The second way they can hire you is what we call the virtual way. Okay, let's do our first meeting by Zoom. You don't need to come into the office. We're going to save you a trip. Now, Dave has a practice in Central New York, but he can offer that practice throughout the entire state of New York now because I don't have to be in the same location. So that's what we call virtual application of what we do in our practices. But there was a third one that nobody understood, and that's the digital one. So now you can actually come to my law firm and hire me as a lawyer and actually generate do everything to get your legal documents, have the interaction with me you would have had if you come into my office, but it's all done technologically and you never physically meet me.
Mm.
So but here's the beauty of this. You can switch between them as you go through the process. So if you want to start in the office, we can then move you to digital and then move you to virtual and then back to traditional. And you decide as you go through the process. I think this is the future of the practice of law because people, the idea of going into a traditional law firm, well, my 60-year-olds and plus are okay with it, their kids aren't. And their kids are the ones stepping in, the sandwich generation, the one where now they're taking care of mom and dad and trying to take care of the kids who are getting their college age, right? That's what we call that sandwich generation. Well, now they don't have the time to come into my office, nor do they have the time to sit there and listen to a lawyer babble. They just want to go online, get the cliff notes, and understand what's next. And that's really where Attorna is evolving into. Because originally, I think when Attorna made its first run, it was trying to compete with the LegalZoom. No, it's not intended to do that. Attorna is the future law practice. Okay. Now, you said, what is going to be changing in the law? I'm going to say two words, and they're going to mean something to everybody, and you're going to understand the words I say. But our understanding of them is where the block happens. The first word is AI. We all know, I don't care if you're living in Bodunk in the mountains of Colorado, everyone understands the impact of AI. Because if you have one of these, and you can just go on that phone and put in a search and get an answer instantaneously, welcome to the world of AI, right? It's a game changer. We now have computers designing computers. Quantum computing the world doesn't understand this, but there's rooms of computers that have to be stored in negative 200 degrees Fahrenheit for them to operate because they're moving so fast, right?
It's going to be great for Canada. They're going to get a lot of data centers.
Yeah, Canada is going to become the home of all these quantum computing. But AI is number one, okay? So that's the first thing that's going to change the practice of law. But what nobody's talking about yet, and I see it, and it's really the next evolution, is this other little thing called blockchain. See, blockchain, and again, I'm not the technical guy. I struggled with Richard getting prepped for this to get on, right? Technological. Okay, do we have the right microphone on? But I understand blockchain and how it works. And what blockchain is, it's a digital way to authenticate. Now, when you think about that, right? Think about a will. Do you know still to this day, there's nowhere where you could do a will digitally? You can't. It still has to be signed in ink with two witnesses, right? Every state. The law hasn't caught up to technology, but technology is coming with a baseball bat. And it's going to start smashing it to bits and pieces. And AI is the first bat that struck. Now, the good news is the law has adapted to AI and again, I don't mean to be cynical. The legal profession is tolerating it. Well, they don't understand you're not tolerating it. It's about to crush you, okay? It's about to make irrelevant the traditional role of the attorney. Now, here's what AI will never do. It'll never change the handshake. Remember I said it went back into my law firm? People still need human interaction. The jury's out, but what they're starting to find in study after study after study is the generation coming up now, the suicide rate is higher than any generation before it. Their ability to succeed is lower than any generation before it because they've all been isolated. They've been isolated behind a cell phone, behind a computer. They've been locked down by this thing called COVID. But one thing none of us can change is the human condition.
I think, and from being a strategic coach, and I really do believe AI is going to have a lot of monstrous changes. But one of the impacts I believe we'll see is that it'll increase the desire for deeper human connection, because a lot of the quote unquote work can be done by something else, not a someone else. And it's going to free up a little bit of time. And what are people going to want to do at that time? They want to go and meet with other people. So I think we're going to see an increase of people wanting to get back to that one-on-one connection.
As a testament to that, Richard, I can attest that that's already happened in my company when I've come back in. 100% of my time is in human interaction.
Mm.
None of my time is spent in computer interaction. I don't do a
Amazing.
single programming. I'm interacting with people and say, well, what would give you the greatest freedom? What would allow you more time to do what you're unique at? What strategic coach would call your unique ability, what my father would call your God-given talents, right? There's something each one of us have innately that's different than someone else. And that comes through interaction of people. And the beautiful part is there's a whole other thing underneath all this, Richard. And that is, I read an article and it said, industrialized countries of the world average 7 working people per retiree.
Mm.
Most of the industrialized countries of the world. Japan is the worst. They're at 2.8. But hang on, US is at 3.9. Now, why that's critical? 3.9. There's nobody coming behind us, Richard. We're not having kids. I'm the youngest. My mother had 11 kids in 12 years. I had 3. My kids are having less, if any. There's nobody coming up behind us. We have to get technology to take over all those things that we relied on humans to do because there's no humans coming to do it. But that will bond and create. And I'm telling you, in my practice, I think you've just got onto something. The future practice, 90% of my time is interacting with my leaders and developing them through human interaction and communication. And that's because, and I'm coaching them into delegating the rest to technology. And that's what they're doing. Every quarter is a new goal, or in EOS terms, a new rock. What can we delegate to technology this quarter?
Amazing. Love it. Dave, this was fantastic. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you for taking the time to be here and the utilization of great technology that allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
And for those of you watching, make sure you stay tuned for next week's episode as we continue to unpack the incredible journeys of the entrepreneurs who are shaping tomorrow.